Today I've got a great little mid-tier destroyer game for you, and it really shows, I think, a great way to play mid and late game. I think that's one of the biggest issues I see in destroyer play is people think they need to make massive plays to regain the lead or try and swing the game in their favor, when really it's just little things that just slowly bring the game back into your team's favor. Yes, the title is correct. We do go down and end up 3 versus 7 in this game. And yeah, it's quite the comeback, I would say. And I want to talk about the thought process and decision making that I go through in these scenarios that help my team win the game. So to start with, this is the early game. And what should you be doing in early game? You should be looking at the capture zones. Here I noticed that there's no radar and there's no hydro, hydro destroyers. So I'm pushing in very aggressively. This cap often has very aggressive destroyer play. And you oftentimes see destroyers try and push into A and then cut into the middle of the map where my Mutsuki is. So we catch him in a Kazi here. And it's possible he ends up trying to do that. So with my Mutsuki here, as well as my friendly cruisers, I bait the destroyer into shooting me, and then I smoke up. Of course, we all know that when you shoot, you get a 20-second debuff on your concealment. And that's what my goal was, to get him to get spotted by my friendly ships so that I could smoke up and deal some free damage to this guy. Of course, he has torpedoes, so we pop hydro. That's one of the great strengths of the T-61, is you have this smoke-hydro combination, so you're very safe against destroyers. And if they don't really understand what you are, sometimes you'll get people that actually push into your hydro. And we're actually the ones spotting this Nicholas right now because of our 4-kilometer hydro. And I'm just going to keep pushing forward to try and keep this guy spotted as long as possible. What this does is it keeps health on our Mutsuki, so he doesn't have to go out and spot it. It keeps health on me, so I don't have to go out and spot him. And hopefully our cruisers can get some nice chunky hits in on the Nicholas. Obviously, not every game is going to look like this. This is a very aggressive opening. I played this very, very strongly. And you're not going to be able to play every opening like this. The reason I did is because I knew I had a gun advantage, or at least a utility advantage over the enemy destroyers, and I knew that the enemy cruisers wouldn't be able to radar me once I was in my smoke. So I felt fairly confident in making that aggressive play. It also helped our Mutsuki pen them in on the other side. So it was a really good play by him to keep the enemy destroyers from having an escape route. Now, I could shoot here, but we would be spotted by the Furutaka. There's no point in shooting here. We want to cap this cap, and then probably get over to B to cap that one, because there's not a lot I can do here while there's 2 cruisers around and the enemy battleships are so far away. That's why I decided to move away from here. And now I would say this is a very early time to call this mid-game. We're not even 5 minutes into the battle. But considering we've killed 2 of the enemy destroyers already, I feel pretty confident in calling this mid-game. You can see things are looking very good for us. I've sped up this part because essentially we're just traveling over to B. The decision here is to just leave A cap. The enemy team lost 2 destroyers. It's unlikely they want to push into a cap that they lost 2 destroyers at. So I'm assuming that these ships are going to turn around and start heading towards B, maybe meet up with their team on C, and hold B and C together. That's what my prediction is, and that's why I'm moving over here. I'm trying to put myself in front of the enemy team pushing. That's my goal in a destroyer like the T-61, where our torpedoes are a very significant portion of our power. I am a little wary of the New Orleans. If he decides to push towards B, he would spot me around this corner. But New Orleans gets spotted, which is really nice, so we know we're safe right now. And I decide to not drop torps on the New Orleans. I decide to drop them on the Furutaka. He grounded there, and I figured maybe he's trying to get over to B, so I'm guessing that he's going to move forward and move around that rock in front of it. And then he'll be penned in by the rock and my torpedoes, and hopefully we'll get hit. But regardless, we're getting the cap. I noticed that we're losing C very badly, so I'm trying to go over there and help my teammates survive. Our Pensacola is likely going to go down because there's 2 enemy battleships nearby, and he's only on 5,000 health, so I don't really put too much effort into saving him necessarily, but it's the Julio Cesar that I really want to keep alive. I don't want to let the enemy destroyer just have free reign on one of our battleships. Because late game, his health pool could mean the difference between winning and losing if we need him to push into a cap, for example, and stall it out. So that's my goal here. I want to get some torps on these battleships as I'm moving over to deal with the enemy destroyer. You can see that when I have an advantage in gunpowder against my enemy destroyers, I am always trying to take those fights. I am trying to deal with the enemy destroyers because mid-tier, really, it is your destroyers that have to deal with the enemy destroyers. There's not really the option for your cruisers to deal with them. If a destroyer plays smart, they will not get spotted by an enemy cruiser, and they won't get themselves into situations where they're going to die to an enemy cruiser. And that's where you need your destroyers to really help you out. Unfortunately, we end up missing our torps on the Queen Elizabeth, but that's okay, because T-61 allows us to have torpedoes up every single minute. So we'll torp the Koenig next. But you can see I'm moving back to my Julio. My goal is to deal with this destroyer, because I know just how strong a destroyer is uncontested late game. If you're the only destroyer left in the game, and there's no radar, you have free reign to almost do whatever you want to. And you can hard carry almost any game. So even though we have very little damage right now, we've got 2 solo caps, and the damage will come eventually. If you keep launching torps every minute, the damage will come. These torps are if the Koenig decides to turn broadside and try and get more shots off on the Julio. He's likely going to go through that gap, as well as we notice the Dallas shooting, so it's possible the Dallas peeks out of that gap. Kind of multi-use torpedoes. Unfortunately, they're going to hit nobody. But that's okay. I'm still working on the torpedo hits in this game. But for now, this gap is a perfect opportunity for the Hatsuharu to torp this Julio. He's stuck in a very predictable movement, and that's why I popped my Hydro. I figure there's torps coming, and I want to make sure this Julio stays alive. And sure enough, there's the torpedoes. So, had I not been here, we could have possibly lost one of our healthiest battleship remaining. And that would have been really, really, really bad. You can see our New York is in a pretty rough position, caught in between the entire enemy team. But our Hawkins is actually getting out alive as well. So, it's not looking great for our team. But soon we'll have dealt with all the enemy destroyers. You can see we actually outspot the Hatsuharu. That's the advantage of having a premium ship in mid-tier and being able to put your tier 10 captain on the mid-tier ship. And Julio actually gets a really good hit in here. I don't know how I didn't kill this guy here. I was only hitting a few shells. And of course T-61 doesn't have the best HE shells. So decision-making wise, we're looking to cap and we're looking to contest enemy destroyers. That's how you win games as a mid-tier destroyer. If you're a torpedo boat, if you're one of these Japanese torpedo boats that I've been fighting, your goal is to bait the enemy gunboats into overcommitting for you. So if I was this Hatsuharu, the learning moment would be, instead of being down here, I would be trying to play near my Dallas. I would be trying to be as close as possible to my Dallas and trying to bait the enemy destroyer, in this case a T-61, into fighting me when my Dallas has shots on me. So this guy unfortunately didn't play it like that, or fortunately for me, he didn't play it like that, because that's how you deal with enemy gunboats as a ship with weaker guns. Finally, our torps hit. We finally get a decent prediction on a battleship, and we dev strike the Koenig off the map, which does help us. So now we're in a 3v6. I forgot to point out when the New York died, it did end up being a 3v7. And we're down on caps, so not looking good. But fortunately, our early cap pressure has kept the score relatively even. And we finally take out the Hatsuharu, which I should have done earlier if I was aiming better. And there we go. And just like that, we're kind of bringing it back. This Dallas is caught in a really rough position because our Julio should have shots on it. I'm not sure why the Julio went so far wide, but I guess maybe it's because he's on low HP. He was a little bit scared of the Dallas, I suppose. But one thing you got to remember is Dallas is a light cruiser, and Destroyer AP actually has pretty solid DPM, assuming it can pen. So if this Dallas is locked in to going bow into the Julio, our AP is going to do some pretty solid damage. You know, we get not the best salvos right now, I'll be honest, but that's because he's angling at this point. So my goal here is to just distract this Dallas. I'm trying to get this Dallas into a position where our Julio can pop out of the island and have a really nice clean shot on him without the Dallas really worrying. Unfortunately, the Dallas was able to make the full turn, and our Julio is going to have to shoot at an angled Dallas, but it's still better than nothing. We've gotten quite a bit of damage off him, so one good salvo from our battleship should be able to kill him. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to bait this guy into continuing to shoot, continuing to stay spotted, so that our Julio can get a good salvo off on him. Unfortunately, he hasn't quite got around the island yet, so I lost a lot of HP there. But that's okay. Losing HP in a destroyer is fine, as long as you're being productive with it. In countering enemy destroyers, or, in this case, dealing with the last cruiser left. The last real danger to me is this Dallas. And now he's on essentially one shot for me. If I get a good AP salvo, he's one shot for me. So at this point, we have 0 caps, but we've pulled the score back to a 3 versus 4. And now what am I thinking? I'm thinking I need to kill this Dallas, and I need to get to B as fast as possible. Fortunately, our Hawkins played this really well. He's been playing passive, and now that he's seen the enemy battleships pushing into B, he's actually going to sneakily take the A cap, which is probably what helped us win this game. Definitely a great play out of him. And honestly, good on our Julio for staying alive for so long as well. There's a Dallas killed, Kraken unleashed, and 80,000 damage, which is a great damage number for tier 6, I would say. Not over the top amazing, but a decent damage score. I'm going to speed this up because, believe it or not, that's all the damage I'm going to get in this game. Because this end game is all about spotting and pushing the enemy team off the cap and forcing them away from you. Battleships are so vulnerable at this tier and really every tier to destroyers. So what do I need to do? I just need to be a constant torpedo threat. If these guys are spotted, they know I'm nearby, they know I'm a torpedo threat, and they're going to be trying to get away. I was definitely last spotted at C. They know I'm coming from C. So what are they going to do? They're probably going to run towards A and try and get that cap. So it's important, though, that I don't just run off the map right now. If I run away and go to the corner of the map and assume we've got a win here, we actually could lose this game very easily. All they'd have to do is step on A, and then they'd have A and B, and they would tick up on points, and we'd lose the game. These torps are for the King George if he decides to accelerate around the island. And you'll notice the way I'm positioning my ship puts my concealment right on the edge of that island so that I won't be spotted if the King George pops around the island. The goal is to not be spotted right now. Just to remain stealthy, spotting, constant torpedo threat. And when the enemy team gives ground like this, it's your job to take it. This is one of the biggest roles of destroyers, is to take ground for your team when the enemy gives it up. What that does in earlier games, is it tells your team that there's no enemy destroyers in that area. It's really important to take this ground when it's available to you. It really helps out your battleships and cruisers to play around the information you're gathering. Even if you don't spot anybody, let's say early game, you push the enemy team off of a corner, let's say, and you're not spotting anything there, but your presence out there just tells your teammates that there's nobody there. And then they can play around that knowing there's got to be a bigger force somewhere else on the map. Even that is helpful. Not surprisingly, not spotting things is actually helpful, as long as you're positioning your ship correctly. And you can see we've taken B. Our Hawkins plays well and gets out of the cap. Yeah, and we're just securing a nice win, a nice solid tactical outplay here. Nothing fancy, nothing over the top damage number wise, but just playing your destroyer smart will win you a lot of games. If you make the right decisions, you can even come back from games like this where we were down 3 versus 7 and we had no caps. I definitely thought this game was lost, especially when I went down to help my Julio. In the live game, I thought for sure we'd lose this game, but to my pleasant surprise, I had some great teammates here to help me finish out the end, and it's actually going to time out on the timer. I've been getting quite a few of these games, actually. Pleasantly surprised that there's not as many blowouts happening, at least for me. They still happen, of course, but having games come right down to the wire, a 3v3 as the clock's about to time out, is a pretty special experience, and making the correct decisions isn't always easy in these games. So I hope that me walking you through my decision-making process here might give you something to think about or help you make better decisions in your games once you're in these mid and late game scenarios where good decisions can actually pull a win back for your team. So pretty good result, 2.4k base XP, and actually my teammates didn't get a lot of base XP either. So pretty good result carrying this thing out. So for those of you curious, here is the build on my commander. I am running pretty much the standard destroyer build to start with: preventive maintenance, last stand, survivability expert, and then concealment. I think that's pretty standard 10-point commander. And then I take superintendent, adrenaline rush, and fill the tubes. This allows me to have this pretty incredible minute-long cooldown on my torpedoes. Yes, my guns suffer a little bit, but you're not really playing T-61 for the guns necessarily anyway. And of course, getting that amazing 6.1 kilometer detection for tier 6. It's a very strong destroyer, and it's about to leave the game if you didn't know. 10.5, as soon as that releases, this ship will no longer be available to purchase. Of course, you'll still be able to play it if you own it, but you just won't be able to buy it from the store. Yeah, and running propulsion mod, getting the torpedo tubes to move just a little bit faster, up to 68 knots. Something to consider would be running Swiftfish as the final couple points, but I don't quite have a 21-point commander, as you can see. So that'll come later, but that'll get your speed up even more, making the torpedoes even more deadly. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope this was a good video for you, and have a great day.